one of the standard things that happens for sinkers is that they go to swim lessons and that they get in a room with a bunch of people who float, and they're told to float and they just can't float, and it just doesn't happen, and they feel like they failed. And they really haven't, it's just physics. And so what I want to do is show the difference of this. So again, you have an appreciation of the differences. So Fred, if you would, Fred knows to float and how to do this. I want you to float. Please don't roll forward or anything. Just stay steady with your float and let's see what happens. Okay. This is a classic float, right? His head, his chest are there. Sometimes you'll see somebody's rump up there at the bottom, his feet up here at the top. That's a classic float. That's one of those floats that appears in a magazine and that people think, oh yeah, that's what that really looks like. But sinkers don't float like that, and sometimes they don't float. And Equanda's a great example of this. So if you will show us, madam. And you'll notice she goes here, she doesn't even quite get to the top, her feet sink immediately, and the rest of her just follows right along, and she's down on the bottom, and what's she gonna do, right? So one of the things she's gonna do is propel. We started talking about propulsion. We'll talk a little more about it. Thank you, madam, appreciate that very much. So that's just the way that float happens for her. So for sinkers, we gotta do things a little different. For floaters, we go one way. For sinkers, we go another. The result's the same in the end, but the way we get sinkers there is a different process. So I want to talk quickly. That was just the sink. I want to talk a tiny bit about recovery. Both of these folks know how to recover. For sinkers, it saves you from having to be on the bottom of the pool before you push up. At least at this level, but it's the quickest way to get your face back up out of the water and breathe, so it's useful. So Fred, would you do a standard just float recovery for us? So just float for a second and then recover and stand up. Okay. This is classic. You've seen this in all the swim lessons you've ever taken. You float, you push down with your hands, you pull your knees in, and you walk like that. Now, I got Fred in shallow water. He usually pulls both of those legs up together, but it's a little harder for a tall guy in shallow water. So thank you, but same thing. You're pushing your hands down, you're pulling your knees up first, and then you're pushing your hands down to help you stand. So we do the same thing for sinkers. You just don't do it up here on top of the water, and it just keeps you from having to wait until you're at the bottom. So here's Equanda. She can reach out. And in this case, not only she's not even pushing out with her hands in front, she's got them on the side. She's using it to push her up. For Equanda, because her feet sink, and this is true for anybody whose feet sink, because her feet sink, if she does anything at all to bring her up to the top, her feet are just going to come back underneath her because they're sinking. So she's going to push up, they're just going to sink under her. The cool thing about that is that if she falls to the left, she can and does anything to pull herself up, her feet are going to slide right back underneath her. And it's always going to be true because her feet are always going to be lower than her chest unless she's diving or something, right? Because she's got air in her lungs, and that's going to help keep her up, and her legs are always trying to get down under her to make her stand up, if you will. So if she does nothing, she can get nicely to the bottom with just a little bit of a push up. Her feet swing under her, and she's back up again. You want to do one more time, please? And this time, just don't have to go very far down. Just come on out. Okay. Good. So you saw, I mean, she pulled her knees in, right, just to not bump the bottom. She's just going down fast. That's what happens with sinkers. So we've got to have propulsion to get us up, to get us to breathe, to get us up, to get us moving faster. I mean, every Olympian, okay, maybe a handful who aren't, they're all sinkers. They don't have any fat on their body, right? They're just muscle and bone plowing through the water. All of those people swim fairly well, right? And they sink. So how do you do it? Propulsion is the key to that, and we'll spend some time talking there. So that's back float. That's front float, sorry. We want to play back float for half a second, just to show you the same thing. So Fred and Equanda both know how to do a back float. We've got some videos on how to do that for you who are floaters. For you who are sinkers, Fred knows how to do a back float. Equanda knows how to do a back sink. So we'll talk about those, and then we'll show you a tiny bit about the propulsion for it. But recovery, again, is important for those, and the recovery for the sinker is a little different, and it's really kind of fun. So Fred, if you don't mind, if you'll do just a regular back float, just like what we're used to seeing, and then come up whenever you're comfortable with that. Nice spread. Look at that beautiful float. Oh my goodness. Nice recovery, nice gentle recovery, pulling his hands around, pulling his feet in. It's just a pretty, pretty thing. Okay, when Equanda does this, it looks a lot, and you can hang on a second, I'll save you a tiny bit of pain. It looks a lot like her front float, right? She's just gonna fall. She can fall, and it looks like a tree falling in the woods. That's the way that plays if she has nothing going on, right? So Equanda, if you would this time, fall back. When you see that you're sinking, do recovery the way that feels comfortable for you, the way you do it now, and I'll just talk to it as that happens. And she's going down. I'll talk about nose for a second. You see she just pulls her knees in. Her feet slide right back underneath her. She can stand back up. It's not a big deal. So a lot of sinkers get really worried that they're going to sink and get stuck at the bottom, and if they pull their feet up, their feet are just going to rock underneath them, and they're going to be able to stand, and it's a simple thing. So we spend some time really practicing getting comfortable with that piece. And then I think we're good. So here's what we know. We know that Fred's a sinker. We know that Fred's a floater. We know that Equanda is a sinker, and we know that from history to train them exactly the same way doesn't make much sense. So we're going to spend a little time at this point. We're going to split off Fred with floaters, and they're going to go learn to swim the way the floaters learn to swim. We're going to spin Equanda off with sinkers, and we're going to teach her the way we teach sinkers, and that's the piece we're at now. That's where we're going. Thank you. So the other thing I need to tell you is that Equanda has this really cool nose clip, and it's a nose plug in this case, and it's called Sinus Savers, and they're now out of business, and we're working on finding a replacement for them. But if you're going to fall backwards like that, you've got to protect your nose. So you've either got to hold your nose while you're going back or get a clip. There are all kinds of nose clips that will go on noses. If you have a flatter nose, if you had a broader nose, if you have a teeny tiny little nose, like a button nose they call, any of those, the classic clips will slip off, they won't stay on. So the nose plugs that like this have been huge and made a gigantic difference for her. If you're a sinker and you're gonna try to do this, don't do it just like she did it. Either have a clip or hold your nose, because otherwise you're gonna snort water in. It is a miserable experience. It doesn't get less miserable with practice. It's just unpleasant. Could protect your nose. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. It's a YouTube channel. We're here, so there are a few things we need to say.
You should like and subscribe to keep up with us.
Ring the bell so you know when the next video comes out, and share with your friends.
If you've got comments, let us know. We will respond to your comments. We have merch down at the bottom. It's not anything as cool as this, but it's the newest versions of these things. And we have a lot of other social medias like
Facebook
and TikTok
and Instagram.
And we wish you years of comfort in the water.